All right, let's do dark mode and safe search off. Incognito mode. Okay, let's talk smut.
And with that, welcome to this week's episode, or this month's episode. I'm never going to get used to that, of the 800s. I am your co-host, Alex, and you just heard from my smutty co-host, Adam, and
Smutty co-host.
smut searchy co-host. And as always, thanks to Alan, the man behind the curtain, making this all happen. And with that, why don't we quickly get into our plugs so we can start talking about some spicy things.
Sure thing. If you joined us for our pre-show, you heard some music. That was Fearless First by Incompetech Music. They have a bunch of cool and awesome scores that you should check out. Go to incompetech.filmmusic.io to see more. DM's Table is the brand and the name. If you'd like to know more about us, hit up dmstable.com. We pay for various things for this show by two primary methods. First is Patreon. The link is below your video. We're DM's Table on Patreon. And if you'd like to support us, it'll only cost $2 a month, and you get the right to vote on what we read. The other way we do it is through Etsy, dmstable.com/Etsy for our Etsy page. There we sell 3D printed nerd memorabilia as well as some digital art and some other stuff. So if you're interested, give her a check out and see what cool nerd stuff could be yours today or however long shipping takes. A couple other things for you to know. We have a YouTube channel. We are the DM's Table on YouTube. You should check that out. The link is below your video. And we have two primary social accounts. That's Facebook and X. On Facebook, we're at the DM's Table, and X, we're at DM's Table. And last but not least, if you want to get up close and personal with us and chit-chat just all the time, then you should ask us for our Discord link. You can hit us up on our socials for that. On our Discord, we talk about all things nerdy, not just books, although books are a big part of it. We talk D&D, 3D printing, books, pop nerd culture, the works. So if you want a more frequent discussion, hit us up for that Discord link. I think that's pretty much it for plugs.
All right, so this week on the 800s, we're going to be discussing the romance novel selected in honor of Valentine's Day, A Touch of Darkness by Scarlett St. Clair. A classic tale as old as the mythology itself, reimagined in a modern New Athens where mortals and gods mingle as they did in ancient stories. Here, Persephone is descended from Olympia to live amongst the mortals in defiance of the desires of her mother, the goddess Demeter. Here, she navigates the everyday struggles of balancing earning her journalism degree, managing a social life, and starting her new internship. Yet, despite her mother's decree to avoid the gods, Persephone finds fate and curiosity pulling her towards them, especially the worst of them all, Hades, god of the underworld. Ever the journalist, Persephone needs to know if he is the demon he appears to be, or does the world and her heart need a touch of darkness?
Very nice. Quick rundown of how our show works. We are a discussion show. So Alex or myself will throw out a topic for discussion for ourselves and chat. Where that topic comes from can be chat or Alex or myself. If you have an idea for a topic, feel free to throw it into chat, and when things slow down, we'll snag that topic, throw it out there for everyone to discuss. Once we throw up a new topic, Alex and I will discuss our own thoughts before checking out chat and throwing up whatever thoughts chat has on the topic. So if you got something to say, don't feel rushed. We are quite long-winded at times, so we'll give you plenty of time to type up your thoughts on it, and then we'll go check it out and give you a shout out if you got something to say. That's pretty much it. Just, chit chat and enjoy talking about the book.
And this is kind of the perfect example of the fact that we are a show for adults, and we do cover adult content and topics. In particular, we give you the warning heads up here as well. There are very explicit sexual scenes, including a trigger warning for sexual assault in this particular book, so bring kids around and yourself, and sometimes at your own discretion. Also, we're trying to create a fun and supportive community over at DM's Table where people can share in all the things that they love and are passionate about without any fear of judgment or teasing or anything of the like. So, in sum, be nice or fuck right off.
Not to be confused with the other kind of fucking, which this book had plenty of.
Yeah, that's why I had to add the third word in there. I needed something else because fuck off could just mean a lot of other things.
I don't know what's with the finger guns tonight. I just felt like
got to do something childish to make up for how not childish this book is. Speaking of which, let's dive right in for today. So, what were your first impressions, Adam?
All right. I'll go first. For a change. If we want to take the innuendo further, it's nice of you to let me go first for a change. Get it? This book did not start out hot and heavy, which I appreciated. I've read some romance books that jumped the gate. Oh, hang on. Let me just... That was nothing at all.
You didn't see anything.
That was not a spider. Okay, so I appreciated that it didn't start out with a hot and heavy scene. It really opened up the world. It was a shriek. It was a shriek, P.S. Drake. It wasn't a full scream. I missed the first hit. So, anyway, I liked the world building that we started out with. The throwback to all the Greek gods and goddesses. Really set the tone for what to expect, especially like right away. It was like, people know about the gods, which is kind of cool, and a different take to the normal gods are this thing that exists somewhere else. So yeah, I was really excited to see how the story would be built upon this world that has taken shape from page 1.
My first impressions were a bit different because we've talked about this before, because we've had a few other books that have had this Greek mythology theme to them. I'm pretty well versed in a lot of the stories, and a lot of this setup was not what I was expecting, because knowing that this was supposed to be about the love story of Persephone and Hades, which is like one of the more well-known mythological stories. I was expecting the setting to be like ancient Greece, but they basically decided they wanted to do it in a modern setting, which I think was a good decision to be able to give a little more flexibility to the characters, because the Greek gods of old have a very specific character to them for the most part, and it alludes to that throughout this book. But I thought it was a good choice to give for the author to give herself that kind of flexibility with a story that a lot of people know fairly well, while still maintaining some of the things that you'd expect. Like, it's not a surprise that Persephone and Hades are drawn together, but you start wondering about, it gives you something to question. Like, how are the elements I know going to be touched on, are they going to be left to the side and whatnot? So that was more of like what drew me in about it, was curiosity about what the author's specific take was going to be. And there's definitely some changes in particular to Persephone, which kind of has to happen when you make Persephone the protagonist. Because even in the story where she's one of the main characters in ancient Greece, she's not the protagonist. She's kind of like more damsel in distressy about it. So, I mean, there's more to it than that, obviously, but it makes her feel like a secondary character. So it wasn't too bad. I could definitely feel a lot of the very typical romance setup stuff happening from the beginning too. You're the character is in a place of transition, which is pretty typical for a starting point. It's not that uncommon to find like when a female character is a lead, for her to be put in this like kind of more active state, like she needs something to move her about the world, and in this case it was setting her up as a journalist, so like something to get her to interact with characters she normally wouldn't have. So like it was a pretty typical setup there. So there was some stuff that was very familiar and some stuff that wasn't right off the bat. So more or less what kept me going on this one.
V.S. Drake liked the world building and character introductions in the start of the book. Yeah, definitely agree with that. For me, the question is always, if you're putting your world in the world, like the world we know, how do you expand on that? How do you make the setting feel alive in the book? And I really liked what St. Clair did with the various settings that we see the main character placed in, like the journalist headquarters, the dorm room / apartment, the various nightclubs. It all felt like it was a custom world thrown together just for this story, which I greatly appreciated.
Yeah, it becomes a lot less custom when you like, because it is kind of a perfect amalgamation of real world and like the essentially like the settings for like the old Greek tales. So there's a lot, and I think she did do a good job of kind of making it her own while creating familiar spaces for people who are familiar with the story, like the fact that the gods interact with the humans in the ancient world, not uncommon. The fact that you have to go to specific places to find them, not uncommon. The fact that they gravitate towards certain people, not uncommon, but turning it into more of like a job type of thing rather than a complete servitude thing, it was like a nice little twist, and like it makes it feel, I guess, more immersive, because you don't have to try to imagine yourself far flung into the past. It's like, oh, this is like, what if the gods walked among us in the real world here? And so in that bit, there's some subtly, it's not drastic world building, but it's effective.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this: you know the Greek gods way better than I do. Is there anything that St. Clair changed or tweaked for her story that you felt like didn't fit the Greek gods or wasn't a good matchup for the Greek gods that you know?
The ones that didn't match up, well, the biggest one is Persephone. Is she's typically seen as a much more passive character, powerful but passive, and creating a character that kind of turns that on its head, where she starts off not very powerful at all, although technically speaking she does in the Greek tales as well. She's not shown to be powerful, even if it's kind of known that she is. And the fact that she is so much more assertive and domineering is not the right word, but um, driven, I guess, more purposeful, is very different from this kind of character. Because in the ancient Greek version, she's just kind of whisked away from a field of flowers into the underworld because Hades wants her. Like that's kind of it, you know. But she kind of had to be different to be a protagonist. Otherwise, she's just kind of a more setting than character. Otherwise, I think most things were, I think, purposefully chosen for the gods to take on a specific aspect that is within their realm. Like Aphrodite being not just the goddess of love and lust, but also like a defender of love and a punisher of those who betray it is a thing. Like she's not just like this god of beauty and love. She is vengeful in the way that some people who like people can be when they're in love and they're hurt. I think some liberties get taken with Hades as well a bit. He's not necessarily like evil and like outright manipulative as but like he's typically kind of cold and uncaring for the most part. Like his active role is different, but that gets explained through the book in a way that is, it makes sense. It wasn't the most satisfying for me because of some of the ways it was portrayed, but you know, more or less they made sense. Like most of the gods are in it for themselves because they are the personifications of forces in the world rather than beings. And I thought she did a good job of like showing how like a being who is just kind of playing their own games with mere mortals was a pretty decent depiction for the most part.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
I was surprised by how, I guess, mortal they all seemed. Like easy to trap or kill. Like especially the trigger warning club scene where Persephone is drugged. Like I was surprised that there is a drug that works on her, you know?
Well, I mean, I think some of the presumption is like there are things that do affect the gods, but they are generally things that live in the world of the gods, like or they are titans or things like that. There are things that can affect the gods, but they are of like a godly stature. Like they would undo mortals in a way that gods can resist. Or, and I think one of the things that they, you know, there's like a mythical element to the things that can affect them, and it shows that this wasn't necessarily on that level because Persephone wasn't affected by it in the way that she was supposed to be. Like it should have like knocked her out, if not worse. And instead she's able to kind of semi-function. But more than Adonis was obviously expecting. So, but that was because he didn't think she was a god.
Yeah.
Or he didn't know that she was. So yeah, there's elements to that. The gods themselves are shown to have flaws. It's just that they are powerful beyond man's ability to really take advantage of it without visiting vengeance upon themselves. So, you know,
yeah,
that makes sense. That makes sense to me.
You had a topic in mind?
Oh, I was going to ask you, which of the gods you felt was the most compelling? as somebody who doesn't know them well? Like, what one just like what one or one stood out to you the most? And why?
I'll stay away from the obvious choice of Hades because he was a main character and we got a lot of screen time with him. Uh, I really appreciated. Shit, man, you just said her name. What the heck? The Aphrodite. I really liked that scene where she seduced the married man and then was like, "I'm gonna fuck you up for being unfaithful to your wife."
Yeah, that's a nice. I like that scene too. Honestly, I said, it shows a little complexity to things that like I think most people know that like the big ones like Aphrodite, Ares, Zeus,
Mhm.
Poseidon, things like that. But showing the more subtle parts to their nature, I thought that was a pretty nuanced way to do it, which was in a way satisfying. Like if you're willing to sell your love down the river that quickly, like get wrecked.
P.S. Drake says he likes Hermes, which is a very understandable one. He was, I would almost say, the comedic relief of the story, where he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go fuck around. You want to come?"
Yeah, like that's actually another good one that you bring up, Straight, because Hermes is a god that is often, I think we associate him as like the more so the messenger, and they played up his kind of trickster nature because he is a trickster type of god, and like despite being a messenger, he does like of all the gods like kind of playing games, and he does kind of weasel his way into a bunch of other people's stuff. Like that's just kind of how he works. So that's like an excellent example of one that shows a little more complexity to them. Um, Personally, my favorite of them was I I think I have to lean a bit more towards Hermes because I think we got a little bit more out of him, and I also am trying to qualify this because the audiobook has like some extra features at the end that don't necessarily come with like the book. So I'm trying to keep it in the realm of, if you bought the book and it didn't have that extra bit, what are you working with? And I think that
Mhm.
gives Hermes the edge for me. But if you're talking all in all, it's about even. But those are the two best examples of a little more complexity being shown. Um, and you know, I guess then to that point, were there any that you found disappointing as characters, gods or goddesses?
Um, I'd say Demeter. Like it felt like all we got for Demeter was that she was mad at Persephone for everything, and that she was a manipulative parent.
Mm-hmm.
Like it felt like we didn't really get the side of Demeter that we should have gotten for Demeter. You know what I mean? Like it
Mm-hmm.
felt like her only point of being in the story was to be Persephone's mom.
Um, Kind of, and I'll lend a little context to this. There is in the like original storyline beef between Demeter and Hades because Hades steals her away. So I think she was meant to be a foil to Hades, and if Hades is going to be good, you have to kind of make Demeter a bitch. Like, you kind of like. Yeah, I think but I don't like how that bit was played because I think there could have been a little more subtlety to it, but instead they're like, well, this god chose to harden their heart, and this god chose to open it. Yeah, it gives these diametrically opposed forces, which I don't know. Demeter being a goddess of the hearth and of harvest and like home, turning her into just this kind of like all negative character well, it felt a little one note, which was disappointing.
One. Yeah, I guess I understand the idea of her being the foil, and um, she was the one who pushes Persephone.
Yeah. Well, she plays
Away
the
and stuff.
opposite in the ancient story, so like she was playing the opposite in this one too. It's just like you turned Demeter into the boring character instead of Persephone. That's all.
Let me ask this question. It's kind of jumping around out of the thread of topic here, but something popped into my head that I remembered I wanted to discuss while you were talking.
We are definitely moving towards a new topic, so lay it on me. On us, I should say.
So mid story, Persephone's walking in the underworld, and she came across that village while they were having a celebration. I forget which celebration it was, but at that celebration, they were like, "Well, we want you to know that we think of you as our queen."
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to know what you thought of the underworld's inhabitants kind of assuming Persephone as their queen long before Hades did, and if you thought it was earned or not.
It wasn't like that long before, because she had been there back and forth a number of times, and I think it was just kind of used as this plot point to show that, like, hey, we've been around Hades way longer than you, and we've seen a change in him, so we're going to point out this change that you're ignoring because you hate him. Did it feel earned? Not particularly. And that was one of the issues I had with the story, is a lot of it didn't feel super well earned as far as certain things go. It just kind of like happened because the force of the fates made it happen, and this other stuff was just kind of like, I need to justify this as I'm running by it as fast as I can. Which is kind of tricky when you're choosing a story that has a known destination. Is how do you mitigate like getting to that point while justifying it in a way that is much more complex than stories were told from the story that you originally had. Don't think it was handled the best. I didn't mind that scene because it does show a part of the underworld that I think people don't necessarily know about, is that it isn't like we assume, probably a lot because of like the Hercules movie from Disney, that the underworld is this like bad, horrible place, and it's only dark. It's only dark and terrible. But like a lot of ancient afterlives weren't all like bad. It's just a place to live your life until the next thing, without quite the same amount of suffering, unless you wind up in hell. And hell and Hades are not the same thing. Hell is essentially Tartarus.
Yeah.
So which we get a brief glimpse at. you know. So it wasn't too bad, but I thought it was kind of trying to specifically push a narrative.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt about it. Is like, yeah, we all know it was going there. I think it would have been a good moment to be like she walks into the town and they're like, "Oh, my queen," and then she goes, "WTF you talking about, bro?" And and then they go, "Well, Hades was in here and he couldn't shut up about you, and the Fates were in here the other day and they were saying something about how how shit's gonna go down, and we just kind of assumed, that like that's where everything's going. Sorry, we jumped the gun, but instead it was more of like I think St. Clair tried to take it as more of a um, she's being accepted by the people and Hades at the same time movement, kind of like a heartfelt acceptance.
Yeah, and that is something that I didn't mind, and that's why I didn't mind the scene as a whole, is because Persephone is kind of like, while Hades rules, she's even in ancient Greek mythology kind of the like woman of the people in the underworld. Like she gives more face time to the non-gods, like she is seen wandering the underworld as opposed to Hades, who kind of looms over it, type of
Yeah.
thing. um and that idea of bringing life to the underworld is kind of in that as well, like both in this book and in the ancient story. So it's uh yeah, that scene does a bit to add to that, but I honestly uh I think like those moments were better served like when it was talking about her day to day of going to tend the plants and then playing with the kids and stuff like that. That celebration was more of a, you need to get out of your own way, but it was kind of ham-fisted in my opinion.
Yeah.
Oh,
I definitely agree with like it just kind of transitions things pretty quickly. Like what you were saying earlier about the like going really fast past a thing and oh by the way she's queen bye.
we have a I honestly I agree with that. We have a question from Via Strake. So what was your take on the writing style, action scenes, prose, and such?
um so that's a good question that I'd like to break into different sections, um, because I feel like the prose for this book changed drastically during particular moments. As you will with romance books, right? Like that's the point, is to get a little smutty and
Well, I
and
mean,
stuff.
that's part of the writing style, so what do you
Yeah.
think about like the fact that there were, like, why don't you elaborate a bit
Like
more on like what it was like
obviously
reading
I'm
those different
I'm going
styles?
to.
Oh, sorry, my
um but so I really liked the natural progression of normal scenes where it felt like a very relaxed day-to-day narration. We did talk about the obvious pacing issue, so I'll sway away from that, but like it did feel very natural and very inviting for a reader, for the normal parts. And as far as the smutty moments go, there's obviously a quick change of pace uh, into those moments. I appreciate that it wasn't like slap you in the face dirty, but it was pretty hot and heavy. I feel like it was a rough transition from one to the other, but once you got there, it was a natural, easy, uh, good flow.
uh honestly, that was fairly similar in my take, but like it's something that I find is fairly common for a lot of people that write romance. It's almost like there's two versions of the author. There's the author that wants to write other things, and then there's the author that knows how to get hot and heavy. And like different authors have different skills in making that transition. And unfortunately, I don't think St. Clair does super well in making the transitions. And this, I would say, even includes the action scenes. The action, if like she wants to add tension, it has to be sudden and violent and like in your face. When it's there, it makes sense, but there's like you said, there's not a very good transition in between them. But when you're in it, you're like, that makes sense. This it's decently well written. It's easy. It's an easy flow to it. I do think she's actually way better at the non-smutty scenes, because like it's written in a way that can feel pretty immersive because the prose is well done for the most part. It's the other thing I had an issue with, and this is again another thing that happens, I think, just because of the nature of romance books. The dialogue felt a little stilted sometimes, in particular in between Persephone and Hades. Like there always seems to be like, I'm going to say this thing, but it's going to be undercut by the fact that I want to jump your bones. And it always has to be like, man, I'm pissed at him, but he's hot, so I can't be that pissed at him. Like having that said 100 times over was kind of annoying. Like,
I did
I
feel like we
it.
sat there a long time. Like we sat at, I don't like you, but you know, if you touch me the right way.
And I get what the purpose of that is like these books aren't about the climax moment. They're about building tension. And like there's ways to build that tension. Like the easiest way to build that tension is through like the inevitable sexual tension that comes up. And I thought that there were moments of it where I was like, that makes sense that it's that intense, but then there's other moments where it was just not. I might have preferred a little more subtlety in the way that it was done. I don't know how purposeful that was, or if that's a feature of her writing style. It might be purposeful because the gods aren't beings of subtlety for the most part, unless you're talking about the trickster ones. Like they're subtle until they're not, and then when they're not, they're really not. Yeah, it might be purposeful to be a strike. It just wasn't my favorite, personally, in some of those moments, because I'm like, we get it. You're hot and you're hot for each other. That doesn't give tension to me. It's kind of like pseudo tension, and those moments felt a little lazy. But then there's other moments where like, yeah, I called for that kind of passion, and she's really good at the prose for those things. She gets just a little bit poetic, like you might in your head, and you know, definitely knows how to get spicy.
I will say, I think the audiobook narrator kind of played down a lot of the scenes with the tone that she chose to read the book in. It was pretty monotone, I think, for most of the book until you get to the hot and heavy scenes, and then she's like, "I'm going to throw a ton of passion into my voice."
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. To that end, I actually did read like one of those scenes with if I got a hold of like an ebook version, and I read like one of those scenes, and it still comes through to a degree. It definitely gets played up by the audiobook narrator, but I think there's a little more balance, but there's still those rough cuts, and there's still parts of it that I think are they could have used a bit more subtlety in the writing.
Yeah.
You know.
So,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Got a question.
You can.
I wanted to ask, like, since we're kind of on that topic, what did you think of the romance? Not the hot and heavy stuff. Let's start with like, what did you think of the romance part of this, like the love story?
I felt like it was pretty toxic. Like I don't think Hades really earned Persephone's love. Especially because like it seemed like he was supposed to be a classic white or knight in shining armor, chivalrous gentleman type, and she was supposed to be the modern 21st century working woman persona, and it felt like those two just would not get along. Especially when he was like overly demanding about how she behaved and how she let him treat her.
Yeah, I honestly, I'm glad that you brought up that point about like their natures kind of being like so diametrically opposed, because like we like to say opposites attract and whatnot, and that might be true, but that doesn't make it not toxic. Also, it is so weird to think that she is essentially like 20 years old and he's millennia old. like like it takes, but like I get that they're gods and the immortality aspect makes it a little bit different, because eventually, all things being infinite, they'll, they're just lesser, or she's just a lesser infinity, like, but it's still weird because this guy has like this crazy amount of experience and she's freaking 20. Like, and that and like to make it think that it's okay for like him to be like, I can treat you the way that I want to treat you because I know more about the world, is not okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where you get like that demanding aspect of him, and he doesn't like, yeah, he's got these nice elements, but he also does that thing that drives me nuts with like these stories. It's the thing that I've had a complaint about in every romance story we've done, is the I know stuff I'm not going to communicate with you because reasons. And the reasons are often not satisfying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Via,
And yeah, go
Via
ahead.
Strake says he never felt like they were in love. It was lust with a base for potential love. I think that sums it up. Is what I was trying to say is like I don't think they would really ever fall in love, but like he's hot, she's hot, kind of a thing.
Yeah, and that's, I think, one of the things that I don't typically like about these types of stories, and it's not in all of them, but it has been in a lot of them, is the like is they portray that as love, as if it is the same thing as the love that takes like commitment to make last. It is like, and it's honestly super ironic considering the fact that the Greeks have like 8 different words for love, and they all mean different things. So, and they kind of allude to this a little bit in the way that the gods treat love, as like her mother's love is not what you would typically think of as love. It is love in a possessive way rather than like freely given. Uh, but I also don't like this idea, is like you have to be absolutely smoking hot to find love with anybody, and if you don't have this insane amount of passion, it's not worth pursuing ever. And passion's important for sure, but like I think what makes it more palatable in this story is that it is literally got, like it is mythological. Like
Yeah.
it is as fiction and fantasy as it gets, you
Yeah.
know. So like that makes it a bit more palatable. And to V.S. Drake's point, yeah, it was the fates made it destined to be so, so it had to be. And that is in like the old version of the story, which is fine. It's just, man, it is tough. It's tough to swallow sometimes because I don't particularly care for it myself. Because it portrays like you said, a toxic kind of environment and makes it seem okay. And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. Via Strake asked a little bit ago, how do you feel she did with the male representation?
I thought, honestly, like a lot of it was pretty much what you think. Like the main character had to be hot and brooding and misunderstood. So like there was a lot of very typical, like none of his flaws are actually flaws except for the fact that he can't seem to communicate. you know
Yeah.
um and even then I'll get through that. And then everybody else was, Adonis was, he had to play the creep. Mercury was barely like a man in any of the scenes. He was just kind of like a guy who happened to like have a power that would let her see stuff that she wasn't supposed to. um, Uh, so I didn't like Hades' portrayal like as that leading man personally because it feels super unrealistic, even like unrelatable, I guess. Uh, Honestly, what saved it for me for her representation of men was her boss. Like her
Yeah.
boss legitimately cared, was there for her, was a mentor, was encouraging, um, didn't always made mistakes, didn't always know what was going on, but when he found out, took action about it. And I was just like, man, you're the best written male character in this entire damn book.
Yeah.
um,
I gotta say, like, it is pretty easy to see Hades and Adonis and go like, St. Clair hates men, but you do get the other side of the coin with the boss, which was a nice reprieve.
yeah, and well, and one of the things I found that I think it was important that the boss had to be was the boss was the least mythological character outside of like her roommate, right?
Hmm.
And it was showing that this is what humans act like, and all this other stuff is hyperbole because they're gods, you know?
Or associated with gods.
Yeah. Yeah, and so like I'm glad that there was more to men in general. I like because there are romance novels that leave that out. You just have the guy who's gross and the guy that she wants, and the guy who's gross is there to show her that the guy that she wants isn't as bad as she thinks he is.
Yeah.
White knighting and chivalry, like what you said. He had to come in and save her at some point,
Hmm.
you know. Um, and having another character to round out that representation was good. And honestly, I thought it was kind of cool having the roommate being kind of that element that humanized her as well. Like I know we're talking about the male representation, but like I think how she handled the mortals was actually pretty decently nuanced. Like yeah, college age girl found a hot guy who's into her and she's into him, but eventually she's just like, wow, he's a creep, and moves on to the guy who's actually helpful and nice and like values her, you know, like, and this character was pushy but supportive, and you know, so I thought the mortals were handled well and the gods were treated as these like bigger than life characters, and that made it more, it made it not easier to read. And yeah.
So, knowing what we've said about the love between Persephone and Hades, and the fact that at some point Persephone in the story notes that it's commonly believed among the gods that they can't fall in love, but Persephone desperately wants to fall in love. Do you think, based on what we saw in this book, that Persephone is capable of falling in love? Or is she more among that belief in the gods that they can't fall in love?
This is actually one of the parts that I found myself more intrigued by, because again, Persephone's not a character that I'm used to having a lot of agency in her stories. I think it was set up that she can because among the gods, she's the only one not to have just immediately had power in her life. She knows what it is to live in immortal but effectively mortal. Like she can't die but or from like old age, but she lives an effectively mortal life and knows that there's elements to that that affect things like, sorry, got the hiccups, that affect things like love and romance. And so I think it is possible. I don't think it's impossible for the gods to fall in love like they think. I think the gods got portrayed as being effectively, we've been around for millennia and we're just all jaded as hell. Um, because they're wrapped up in themselves, and she's a goddess that is shown from the beginning to be wrapped up in what she can do for the world because she wants to be a part of it. And I thought that was a smart decision to make her a character that is grounded in a way that the other gods aren't. And she's grounded enough that I think she could not only fall in love, but bring somebody into that, bring another god into that love with her. And for all his faults as a character, Hades is portrayed as the kind of god who could make the choice to join her in that space, in my opinion.
See, I took a different not understanding really, but different route. I think what Persephone was saying about gods not being able to fall in love and her desire to fall in love kind of pushed her to believe that she was in love with Hades, when in reality she's not. Whether or not that speaks to her capability to fall in love, I don't think it does. But I do think the fact that it's something she desires so desperately is a reason why she's so easy to believe that she loves Hades.
Yeah, I don't think we're talking about mutually exclusive concepts, because I actually think the same thing. I think she did trick herself into it. I just think that because of the way the character is written, she has the capacity for it. So, like, I don't think that they can't fall in love. I just don't think that they are in love. They are, as V.S. Drake said, in lust with each other. Right? Like, this is infatuation, and there are elements that they want to love, and the fates are drawing them together to be a couple. And yeah, there is a certain celebrity element to it. I just think of the gods, Persephone is portrayed as the one who might be actually capable of it in a way that the others aren't, because she's new, she has a mortal experience that the others don't, and like her perspective is not quite as inward as the others, although we do see flashes of like she could be like the rest if she makes the wrong choices. So if there's more, I believe there's more books of the series, so I guess we'll see what road she goes down. But I honestly like that there's a potential for character development, which you don't see a lot in romance novels. So.
Yeah. I'd say we got about time for 1 to 3 more topics if you got anything pressing you want to throw in.
We got to talk about it. One to Carolina Reaper. How spicy was this?
Spicy was this. I'd rate it a jalapeno. I think it was definitely spicy, but it could have been a lot more spicy. It was tastefully spicy, I think. It was something I would have been embarrassed to listen to at work. So it's spicy, but it's not something where I was like, I can't listen to this. This is too dirty for me.
I'm glad that we chose this kind of Scoville unit scale, because I was kind of wondering when I was trying to figure out like how spicy is this. I'm like 1 to 10 doesn't quite cut it, because I feel like in a lot of these things it is kind of a exponential growth scale. Like there's like, and yeah, we definitely reached that point where it's starting to accelerate upwards pretty quickly, but like it didn't quite reach to there. So yeah, I think I think habanero is a good, like, it's definitely spicy because there's multiple scenes where you're getting more than just the flowery language. Let's put it that way. The like metaphors for things. It alludes to there being a power dynamic, and I thought like I've read enough in my life to know that like it's pretty well. Those are some pretty well written scenes, and there's a lot of places they could go that get way spicier. It seems like V.S. Drake's with us. Hot without violence. So yeah, it's hot but not violently hot. aside from the one scene in which case justice was delivered.
Yeah.
But um,
Drake wants to know, what do you think of the bad boy persona and gentleman true core cliche?
oh yeah, like he's that is what I was kind of alluding to with the like he's the brooding, misunderstood, like I look bad but I'm not actually, and I'm like, it is a cliche that I'm not the fondest of because it leads to those acceptances of toxic relationships, because a lot of people want to be the one to fix them, want to be the one to understand them in a way nobody else does. Meanwhile, in reality, it's more of when people tell you who they are, believe them.
Yeah.
you know? Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
not a fan of it either, via Drake.
I'm not the biggest fan of it either. So oh for 3, I think. For me though, it seems like it's a popular thing because you want your main character to like break through to the guy so that she has like that victory, but you can't have her fall in love with somebody who is a genuine douchebag. So like he's got to be a good guy at the core, and
Yeah, it's that savior complex slash like there has to be a mystery, because if I can solve the mystery that nobody else can, I can access this person, and somehow that proves my worth. And I'm like, no, your worth is what it is. And I am glad that there is a bit of a step back on that from Persephone's standpoint, where she's like, oh, I don't have to prove I'm worthy of him. This is like a two-way street. There's a little bit of that right at the end, which I'm glad for. But the
yeah.
fact that that trope is played through like 85+% of the book, I don't know. I don't like it because of like it's a fantasy that I think is overused and it has potential to be icky.
Icky.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I get it, but it's dangerous. Yeah, like I get it's compelling. Like who doesn't love a good mystery? But damn, like yeah, there's a lot of danger because a lot of the time people are what they show you.
Definitely right though. It's definitely the trope that sells romance books.
Yep. I mean, again, it's that it's used as a means of building tension, right? And I think at a certain point, pick a different trope or give it something new. I didn't feel like there was anything new in this instance of it, other than it being a god instead of a human.
Yeah. All right. Final thoughts. What were your final thoughts of the book?
um, Honestly, I thought this was like this book was like kind of all over the place for me. There's elements that I very much enjoyed and elements that I very much didn't. I think this kind of confirmed for me that I'm probably not going to be the type who likes most outright romance smut books, because there are a lot of tropes that get overused. But you show me one that doesn't, and like I tend to like them. But I am finding that there are some, like, just because it's a romance book doesn't mean there aren't elements that are worth reading, and in this one there absolutely is. There was some good world building, there were some interesting characters and some tweaks on the story that I have always enjoyed, like, since childhood, and this definitely put a different spin on it, all smut aside, and the smut wasn't terrible, honestly. Like, they were just, so I think this hits the right spots. This is good for those people who do like those tropes and do like that sort of storyline in these types of books. Like, it hits all the right notes with that and has some parts that are above and beyond in the world building and in some of those more yeah. Do you mind taking care of that one, Adam, in the
Yeah.
chat? Thank you. Um, yeah, so for a romance book, I don't think it was like if you treat it for if you take it for what it is, which is like something that's supposed to be hot and heavy and portrays certain tropes that a lot of people like. If you like those tropes, this is the book. This is a book I would absolutely recommend. For those of you that like a little more depth to some of your characters and don't like those tropes, probably not going to recommend it. But I did find it interesting, and I'm still glad that I read it. Ultimately, like was it was a pretty decent read. Not my favorite being a part of these specific genre archetypes, though.
Will you continue the series?
Maybe. I don't feel super compelled to. The only thing that's compelling me to is I'm curious where Persephone will go, if there will be character development or if it's gonna be like same pattern, different book.
Yeah. For me, a big factor in romance books for me to make them something that I would recommend is, and I know this isn't a surprise, but does it have plot, or is it just I want to fuck that guy? And what I enjoyed about this book is it did indeed have a moving story in which Persephone had goals that she wanted to accomplish. She had the whole bring life to the underworld thing. It wasn't all just about her falling for Hades or her finding a way to get Hades' pants, which I much appreciated. It was a very easy read. It was something that was nice to have on in the background. Although, like I said earlier, the smut parts, I definitely stopped listening while I was listening at work when those came up, because I was like, yeah, this is awkward. If my earbuds cut out, I'm going to be like, oh, fuck. So
was she.
Oh, that was good. That was good. Yeah, I would say this does get a would recommend from me. If romance books are your thing.
Yeah.
It's on the lower end of would recommend, but it does get a would recommend from me.
Yeah, this is a would recommend if this is your genre.
Yeah.
It's a would recommend with an asterisk, you know. and the other asterisk for that VS Drake would be make sure your headphones don't leak sound.
Yeah. And as far as whether or not I'm going to continue the series, I don't have any plans right now to continue it. Maybe if I have a lull in books that I want to read, I might circle back to it. But I did just pick up the Court of Thorns and Roses series. Thought I'd give that a shot, and I'm more content, I think, sticking with that series than this series, just because I feel like the world has been fleshed in this book. I don't know what else there is to flesh in it, and I feel like there's more to flesh in the ACOTAR series.
Fair enough. That is the other thing that I would be curious about is the portrayals of the other gods, and mildly curious about that, but I'm with you. It's, maybe not. Looks like VS Drake will be kind of as a fill-in.
Yeah,
Court of Thorns and Roses. Apparently, I'm the only one who's not reading that, so I might have to give that one a try because it's been recommended a number of times. So
yeah, I'm pretty sure it was one of the books we voted on for this particular.
Oh, it was. Yeah,
round.
It definitely was. It was that and A Fault of Our Stars. So in Our Stars, and I've read the last one. So I guess we'll see.
I will say, as standalone novels, I would rank A Touch of Darkness above A Court of Thorns and Roses.
Interesting.
The first book leaves you wanting more for a novel, but I've heard really great things about the rest of the series, and I am excited about the world that was presented in ACOTAR. So But enough about that.
Yeah, maybe it'll show up on our side piece talk. Speaking of which, why don't we go into our little wrap-ups here? So we just did our vote for April's book. Why don't you tell them what we're reading on 420?
Before that, March 30th is Legion, The Many Lives of Stephen Leeds by Brandon Sanderson. That's the one we knew about. And then for National Pot Day, it's Jurassic Park. So not pot related, but 420.
Yeah,
Jurassic
and
Park,
this is a book club.
right.
No watching the movie instead of reading the book. Although,
it may come up in our discussion about.
oh yeah,
comparison.
I'm sure it will, and I'm definitely going to watch the movie. It's just going to be in addition to. Speaking of which, keep in mind that May is this next vote. Anybody can vote. This is our book for May, so bring your friends, tell everybody you know, get them voting because everybody has a chance. It will be free. You do not need to be a Patreon member this month. So get a taste of power, get addicted, and tell us what to read. For May, we are going to try and keep May pretty open so that we can show people like what our channel is all about. So this is going to be all things 800s. So the vote will be up for that relatively shortly. And remember, get the word out, get everybody voting, bring them around, even if it's just for one episode. We'd love to have you.
Yeah. It's what makes our show entertaining is audience participation. So, what greater way to participate than to vote?
Yeah,
get you hooked.
Yep, and then we're starting to get into our summer books. Our schedules do tend to get a little more wonky, so we will keep you updated as we go and when we figure out what our schedules are going to look like. So look forward to that when we have things a little more solidified. Why don't you go ahead and give them the ending plugs for today?
We don't really need to do too many plugs. Just head over to dmstable.com for more information, and there you'll find everything you want to know about us.
And if you decide you like the vote on me, maybe consider dropping a couple bucks on telling us the next time.
Side pieces? Did you get any side pieces? I know it's only been 2 weeks, but
I finished Oathbringer, so I'm on to the Rhythm of War next. I'm so gonna get through all of these books, and honestly, I have not been because I needed a break from like some big books. I've been diving back into my podcasts, and we're not being paid for this at all. But shout out to the latest season of Dimension 20's Adventure High. So like if you like that sort of thing.
Yeah. So I also read A Court of Thorns and Roses in the last 2 weeks. I will be starting book 2 in a little bit. Something I am going to be doing, though, to change things up a little bit is for my side pieces, I'm going to try to keep it to physical media instead of audiobooks. So I physically read A Court of Thorns and Roses, which was a nice change of pace. And I intend on reading the second one, and down the road in a couple of months, I will be physically reading Stormlight Archive books as well. So that'll be exciting. It'll be my first time actually reading them instead of listening to them, despite the fact that I've listened to them like 10 times. So.
Hey, it might bring you a different experience, as you thumb through them. I know that my experience for reading books versus audiobook has been different.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking for is physically reading is a lot, in my opinion, it's a lot more engaging on you because you can't really do anything else while you're physically reading. I do
Yeah.
cheat a little bit while I'll pay attention to conversations in the room while I'm reading, but I don't really engage much.
Yeah, it's definitely more engaging, but it's also more time consuming because you can't be doing anything else. And,
Yeah.
But there's something to be said for that experience. Like, I'll always love physical books for that very reason. Is there's the immersion of imagination is on its own level. So, I guess
Yeah.
plugging reading reading physical books.
Yeah.
Not just making them audiobook trophies on your wall and bookshelves. All right. Well, I think that is it for this week, unless you have something or chat has something. Yes. Hashtag read physical books.
Read physical books. Bring it back.
All right. Well, if nobody else has anything, thank you everybody for joining us. This was an interesting one, and thanks for sticking around. And see you next book.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. It was entertaining tonight, and I can't wait to hook up with y'all in another month.
Phrasing.
I said it that way on purpose. Yeah.